Afghanistan Study Group, established by the U.S. Congress in December 2019, has published its final report. The group makes recommendations for Afghanistan's peace process, clarify the end state, reinforce the conditionality of a final U.S. troop withdrawal, clarify the U.S. commitment to the current Afghan state, work diplomatically to promote the success of the negotiation process, and design an overarching regional diplomatic strategy. Afghanistan Study Group, co-chaired by our guest today, General Joseph Dunford, former CJSCS and former commander of international forces in Afghanistan, outlines a desired end state for Afghanistan by the U.S. We are seeking to find how realistic this end state is, how the U.S. president will react to the report, and whether the U.S. can implement its recommendations. General Joseph Dunford, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks very much. It's good to be with you. My best greetings to the people in Kabul.
Thank you. General Dunford, what your report suggests to the Biden administration?
Well, as you outlined, we really propose a new approach to Afghanistan in the peace negotiations. And while we recognize the unique opportunity that we have as a result of the Afghan peace negotiations that are ongoing right now, we also make some recommendations, some policy recommendations to enhance the prospects of those peace negotiations, resulting in stability and peace in Afghanistan.
As President Biden briefed on the report, does he support it?
We provided this at the request of the U.S. Congress. We have provided copies to the Biden administration to assist them in policy development, but we have not briefed President Biden personally. His staff has had the opportunity to look at our recommendations, and we're confident that those will assist the Biden administration as they make very important decisions about the future of Afghanistan.
Why should the Biden administration take this paper seriously?
Well, I think that we have a, if not historic opportunity, certainly a unique opportunity since 2001 with the ongoing peace negotiations. And we've conducted more than 60 engagements with people inside of Afghanistan, Afghan leaders, members of civil society, members in the region. And I think there is a strong consensus growing about the opportunity for peace in Afghanistan. And I think as the Biden administration takes office, there's a unique opportunity to leverage the ongoing peace negotiations for the end state that you mentioned and that we describe in our report.
Isn't America tired of Afghanistan?
You know, from my perspective, the United States has enduring national interests in Afghanistan and in South Asia. And it's not a question of being tired. It's a question of how are we going to move forward in addressing our national interests. The conditions on the ground have changed over time. The opportunity that's here today is one that we haven't had in the past. And so that's not something we discuss in the report. We take a very clear-eyed look at the situation inside of Afghanistan right now. We take a very clear-eyed look at U.S. national interests. We take a very clear-eyed look at the partnership that we have with our allies and partners at NATO and, of course, our partners in Afghanistan. And we make proposals for how to advance our national interests.
Is President Ghani a good partner in the peace process?
Look, President Ghani is a critical political leader in the peace process. And in my judgment, the Afghans have been good partners over the years. I think President Ghani is committed to peace. And with the right conditionality in the Afghan peace negotiation, I'm confident the Afghan people will have a much brighter future than they have over the past 2 decades.
Can you have a peace deal without an interim government?
Look, that's for the Afghans to decide. How we transition to the future and what the outcome of the Afghan peace negotiations is very much going to be up to the Afghan people.
But if the Taliban want an interim government in exchange of a ceasefire?
I don't think it's for us, certainly the Afghan Study Group, to determine what's acceptable for the Afghan people. What we want to provide is the Afghan people the opportunity to decide for themselves their future. Although We have heard from many Afghans, and we know that that future should be consistent with the values that are captured in the current constitution and consistent with the progress that the Afghan people have made over the past 2 decades.
Do you think that Biden administration can implement the recommendations of the group if it wants?
Look, what we tried to do was provide President Biden and his team with all of the potential policy pathways that are available to them in 2021. We tried to highlight the risks associated with the various pathways that could be taken, and then the probability of success in achieving the end state over the course of years if they followed a particular pathway. This was input to the Biden administration, and the recommendations that we made in the report we think are practical, and we think they can be implemented.
How long should the troops stay beyond May 2021?
We don't address time, and that's a very important aspect of our report. We focus on the conditions, and in our judgment, when the conditions are such that the agreement of February 2020 is agreed upon, and we can be convinced that our national interests that are outlined in the report are addressed, then perhaps some adjustments will be made, but that's in the future, and it's, again, not time-based.
What if the Taliban escalate the violence after the May 2021?
Well, that'll be a decision that the Afghan government, with their partners and allies, will have to address.
Do you support the release of more Taliban prisoners?
Again, this is a decision that the Afghan government will have to make.
What risks has a possible extension of the Doha Agreement deadline for troop withdrawal?
Yeah, well, I think there's a risk that the ongoing Afghan peace negotiations could be disrupted if the deadline of 1 May isn't met. But I think it's really, really important to understand that we are not recommending changing the basic principles that are inside of the February 2020 agreement. What we are recommending is that the conditions that are outlined in the February 2020 agreement be met before any further adjustments to U.S. force posture is made.
Do you support any level of foreign forces in Afghanistan that is not made public?
That's not a part of our report, and certainly not part of the mandate of the Afghan Study Group to take a look at such issues.
Do you think the Taliban will accept to be part of the republic?
You know, again, you're talking about the potential outcome of Afghan peace negotiations, and until the peace negotiations progress, I'm not sure what the Taliban will accept. I think what we really focus on in the Afghan Study Group, and I think it's important for the Afghan people to understand this, is we focus on increasing the probability of a successful negotiation that leads to a peace settlement. And what we want to do is do what we can to support our Afghan partners in that regard. We can't control, obviously, what goes on within the negotiations between Afghans, and so I don't know at the end of the day what the Taliban will accept, but we ought to do all we can to establish the negotiations, support the negotiations, to see if we can come up with an acceptable outcome that brings peace to the Afghan people, which is what I know from all of our engagements, my own personal experience. That's what the Afghan people want. They want peace, and what we have proposed are ways to increase the probability that peace will come to Afghanistan.
But during the work on the report, did you find or did you see any signs from the Taliban that they will accept the new Afghanistan after a peace deal, the new values that Afghanistan has gained during the last 2 decades?
The only thing that I can point to here is the facts, and the facts are that the Taliban are currently in Doha, and they will be meeting with the Afghan government delegation. So I think we should give that process an opportunity to develop and mature.
Is there any middle ground between the Emirate and the Republic?
Again, the future character of the government of Afghanistan is very much something for the Afghan people to address, and we don't address that in our report.
Is Zalmay Khalilzad the right envoy representing the United States?
That's for the U.S. president to decide, although I would say that he has done significant work in getting the parties to the table.
Do you think the peace process is going on in the right direction?
We have facts. The parties are meeting in Doha, and I think that's a positive. But we also have not made the kind of progress since February 2020 that we think is necessary to complete the agreement.
What end state is best for Afghanistan?
The best end state is an Afghanistan that is at peace with its neighbors, one that is not a source of international terrorism, one where the Afghan people can prosper socially, economically, politically. I think Afghan people, like people around the world, want to raise their families. They want to have an opportunity, to have meaningful employment. They want to have an opportunity to have a voice in their government, and these are all things that I think are an end state that is agreed upon by the many people that we spoke to.
Is this end state realistic?
I believe it is. Again, I would point to the opportunity that we have now with the Afghan peace negotiations to bring about that end state. But that end state can only be realistic if the parties approach the Afghan peace negotiation in good faith, and if regional actors and international actors play a constructive role in supporting the two parties in their efforts to bring about peace to Afghanistan.
Do you think the regional countries also want the same end state for Afghanistan?
In our judgment, there's a remarkable consensus in the region right now on some of the elements I just spoke about, and that's one of the areas that gives us hope.
Why this report is worked on now?
We were chartered by the U.S. Congress last year, and we have the United States Institute of Peace that received funding from the U.S. Congress to do this study. So we began last April, and the idea was that this study would be available during the presidential transition of 2021. It would assist the U.S. Congress in providing oversight of our commitment in Afghanistan. But also, I think one of the reasons why the Congress asked us to do this is because they recognize that there is a window of opportunity right now as a result of the Afghan peace negotiations. And the U.S. Congress wanted to make sure that the United States was doing all it can to support the Afghan people as they attempt to take advantage of this opportunity.
What do you think went wrong in Afghanistan in the last 2 decades?
Well, look, I'm not going to relitigate what took place over the past 2 decades. Our study very much takes a look at where we are today, a clear-eyed look at where we are today.
And you were part of the last 2 decades too.
Well, that's right. But I'm here today to talk about the Afghan Study Group, and I'm here to talk about the future of Afghanistan, not the past.
Are the Taliban true in their narrative of victory?
I don't believe so. Again, what I believe right now is that we have an ongoing Afghan peace negotiation. The Afghan government is participating in that. And again, our study and my focus today is to talk about what actions, what policies can best support those ongoing Afghan peace negotiations.
What the U.S. and Afghans should concede to the Taliban for the peace process?
Look, the details of the peace negotiations in any potential peace agreement that may take place as a result of the Afghan peace negotiation, those details are very much the purview of the Afghan government, the Afghan people, and the parties to the Afghan peace negotiations.
Can Afghanistan afford a Taliban regime that lashes women on the streets?
In our view, and we make this very clear in our report, a future Afghanistan should be consistent with the values that are outlined in the Constitution and consistent with the progress that has been made in Afghanistan for the past 2 decades, to include the progress that women have made. And during our deliberations, we engaged with a wide number of groups that represent civil society in Afghanistan, to include women. And we drew the conclusion that that's very much a critical element of a future Afghanistan that is peaceful.
Do you think the mentioned end state is what Pakistan, Iran, Russia, and China prefer for Afghanistan, keeping in mind their rivalry with the U.S.?
In our engagements, the end state that we've articulated in the report is very consistent with what stakeholders in the region have told us would be the optimal outcome and acceptable outcome.
Can we have a peaceful Afghanistan without eliminating the sanctuaries of terrorist groups inside Pakistani territory?
That is a very critical part of any future peace in Afghanistan. There's no question.
Do you think it has been addressed in the current Doha deal?
It's not addressed in the current Doha deal. It is certainly part of the overall policies that the Afghan government has had, the U.S. government has had, and our allies and partners have had in the past few years.
What are your study's clear recommendations for Afghanistan government and people?
Our recommendations really focus on the peace process itself to give the Afghan people the opportunity to answer the very question that you just asked.
How do you think the Taliban will react to the report?
I don't know. We'll see in the coming days how they'll react. I think their understanding is that all U.S. forces would leave on the 1st of May of 2021. We recommend that U.S. forces do not leave on the 1st of May of 2021 unless the conditions in the February 2020 agreement are made. Very early on in the process, the formulation for the negotiations were nothing is agreed upon until everything is agreed upon. And we clearly outlined those areas of conditionality that must be addressed, in our view, before U.S. forces could be withdrawn.
The U.S. government has said that the Taliban have not implemented the conditions of the Doha Agreement, especially the reduction of violence and also the ties with Al-Qaeda. Do you think we can believe the Taliban going on with these recommendations of the study?
I think all of the conditions that are outlined in the February 2020 agreement would have to be verified in implementation with very specific measures of effectiveness. And we certainly know how to do that.
In your point of view, economic opportunities in regional connectivity can be an incentive for regional countries to cooperate with the peace process of Afghanistan?
In our view, the long-term interconnectivity of Afghanistan to the region is very important. And we believe that in our deliberations, we've identified a consistent willingness in the region to do that and a consistent recognition that that's in the best interest of the region as well as Afghanistan.
We talked about regional countries. How important do you think the role of India is in the peace process?
Well, I think the relationship and the Afghans can answer this better than me, but the relationship between Afghanistan and India has historic roots. It's been very important. I think the economic linkages between Afghanistan and India are very important, and I know that India has helped as Afghanistan is maturing as a state.
How do you compare today's Afghanistan with 2013 and 2014 during your time in Afghanistan?
Well, I think the biggest difference between 2013 and today is that we have an opportunity to have a peaceful outcome in Afghanistan as a result of a peace process, and that didn't exist during my time in Afghanistan.
Do you think we did mistakes during the last 2 decades that delayed a peace process?
I think that's fair to say, and we'll let the historians capture the details of that.
As my last question, General Dunford, are you hoping that Afghanistan can have a successful peace process in the short time?
What I'm hoping for is that the Afghan people's aspirations, which are very clear to me in all of our engagements that reinforced what I heard during my time in Afghanistan, certainly the 60 engagements that we've addressed made it clear to me that the Afghan people are tired of war. They're tired of violence. They have high aspirations for peace, to take care of their families. As I talked about earlier, they want to be able to take care of their families. They want meaningful employment. They want a voice in the political process. Above all, they want peace. And that's why I participated in this study, is because of my commitment to Afghanistan. And I wanted to do even a small amount to contribute to developing the kinds of policies that will help the Afghan people realize their aspirations and help the United States secure its national interests in Afghanistan.
General Joseph Dunford, former commander of international forces in Afghanistan and co-chair of Afghanistan Study Group. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.